Jason here again. It's a 1979 JMP 50 watt. Absolute peach of an amp, this one. It looks to be in great condition. Notwithstanding, it's obviously not an original head cab. This belongs to Chris. He tells me that he picked this up for an absolute bargain. Someone was selling it, they had no idea what they had, and it was basically dusty, just sitting there in the garage for years and years and years, and he's picked it up. He's rehoused it in this cab, and he subsequently actually picked up a period correct JMP head cab that this is going to end up in. He's brought it into me to obviously do a checkup on this thing, but he does want the Jose mod that I do, the Cali style Jose mod on this thing. We had quite a long discussion about that, right? It's a vintage amp, 1979, you know, and he's like, yeah, we're doing it. I said, righto, let's do that. 6 CA7s in here. I can see it already. This is a USA. This one, can't see the label on it, but we'll pull this out and have a look at it. But it looks pretty mint to me. Right, let's have a look at this JMP 50. It's pretty clean, isn't it? I mean, you know, for a 1979 amp. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is this poor old chassis. So, I have no idea what's happened here, but looks like it's been cut. That's missing piece there. You normally see the cage nuts here, right? Or, you know. So, obviously to be rehoused, potentially in some kind of cabinet or God knows what. It's like someone's ground the edges off it. And as a consequence of that, the thing was mounted into that head cab through these holes here, screwed in. So you had to unscrew it from the inside of the cab. Pain in the ass. But notwithstanding that, right, this is pretty bloody clean. Now, there's a few things that stand out to me, and if you've got a sharp eye, you might have already seen a few things. Right, it's a 1987 50 watt circuit, and you can see all of this is original. We've got the 68K grid stoppers here and here. Gives you the high and the low, inputs for the normal channel and the bright channel or treble channel, and they're coming into each side of V1 here, V1A, V1B. Now look at this. So 2K7 cathode with a 0.68 microfarad bypass. Standard Marshall. Here, this is an 820 ohm resistor. Someone's pulled out the 330 microfarad. And we know the normal channel in, you know, one of these plexi style circuits is pretty woolly and bassy, so I suspect someone's pulled that out to try and clean up a bit of the bottom end in the normal channel, make it a bit more usable perhaps. No bright cap. Sorry, no bright cap. No bright cap on this one. On the treble channel, that's a crying shame. Someone's pulled out one of the 10K droppers here. This is weird. Not too sure what's going on there, but we'll need to kind of dig deeply into that and find out why that is. Not uncommon to see that. Right, just one 10K dropper from this is our screen supply node to the phase inverter. But what's happened here is the phase inverter supply node, if I'm not mistaken, unless there's something else funky going on underneath the board, the phase inverter supply node has been tied to the supply for V2, the cathode follower, and that's just weird. The power tube sockets all look original. All this wiring here is original, so it's not common to see impedance and main select are still completely intact like that, so that's pretty nice. And this all looks pretty original as well. Now, I'm sure you've spotted it. There's some weird shit going on here. Now, I have not even looked at what the hell is going on here, but I'll just tilt this in a bit. See if it's coming through clearly for you guys. This presence pot here looks cool. Right, this is our bass, middle, treble arrangement. Now, I have no idea what's going on here. And I'm not even going to attempt to understand it. I mean, this is just weird. And now I've seen it. This 0.022 microfarad cap here in our tone stack setup has been pulled out. So, yeah, weird. And there's all kinds of things going on there. Couple of caps. And I'm looking more closely here. This 100K, that's the cathode resistor, right? For this gain stage, it's not there. So I don't know what's going on there yet. Here it is here, the yellow wire, right? Comes onto the board here. I'm going to have to trace that because I don't know what's going on there. Try and figure out what the hell's going on. It's definitely had some mods done to it, that's for sure. Our mixing resistors here, 470K, 470K. Someone's pulled out the 500 picofarad. In fact, it's cut. I can feel the legs of it are still in there. So someone's just gone and cut it out. Again, for our bright channel, you know, which is, for me, it's what these circuits are all about, cranking that. No bright cap, and they've pulled the treble pica cap on the mix resistors here, which is, you know, criminal offence. 100K plates look standard. We're actually missing, I have no idea how this is wired up. I'm going to have to figure it out because look at that. Look at this socket here. Right? It's not even, that triode's not even used. What the hell? Mate, just when I thought I'd seen it all. Okay, so this bloody JMP, right, having had some time to kind of really examine what was going on here, I don't know what to say. Look, first thing I can say, look, this has been so heavily modded, and I want to just kind of highlight some of the mods. There's some obvious shit going on here, right? But there's some less obvious things going on the board. And what was really interesting for me is that the mods that had been made, like I'll highlight this, right? This is your slope resistor on your tone stack. That is in a Marshall. It's 33K all day long. 33K slope resistor. That's a 220K, right? But what's interesting is that that's a fire resistor. Right, so it's period correct. So whoever modded this amp did it either like way back when this stuff was just kind of commonplace at the time this amp, or not long after this amp was actually made, or they secured new old stock parts to do it with. You know, neither of which kind of makes a lot of sense to me. But if I just kind of go through some of this stuff, you know, this is an 820R. This is correct. That has been removed from the stock amp. This was correct. That is a 4K7 cathode resistor, right? Incorrect. It should be a 2K7. So I had to replace that. Now we kind of get into, you know, the what's going on with the tone stack, right? So you would always see a 100K resistor here for the cathode follower. That's a cathode follower resistor, and this amp has been modded to be a plate-fed tone stack. Now, I do know that Marshalls like this have been modded to be plate-fed tone stack to allow a 4-gain stage amp, right? V1A, V1B, V2A, and V2B, so kind of 4 gain stages. So you sacrifice a cathode follower stage, which converts your signal to a low impedance signal. You sacrifice that for a genuine normal gain stage, and then you have a plate-fed tone stack, right? Treble, middle, bass. That's pretty common to, you know, get more gain out of these things. And what was just beyond bizarre in this thing is that it had been converted to a plate-fed tone stack, but only 3 gain stages. This one's used, this one's used, this one's used, and look, there's nothing on here. Right, this triode is sitting there doing absolutely nothing. So what is kind of bizarre, well, not kind of bizarre, it is bizarre. I didn't bother to try and trace this out and write a schematic or whatever. Right? I just looked at it and went, you know, it's coming out. But this is a 220K slope resistor. This guy here, this is your cap for your treble pot, 500 picofarad in a standard Marshall tone stack. That was 100. Okay. And so kind of the more I got into this, the more I realized that it had just been completely changed. Now, it didn't just end there. These pots, okay, now this became our gain pot, this became our volume pot, and here's our tone stack pots here, right? Treble, middle, and bass. The bass was okay at 1 meg. This is a 1 meg audio pot in a standard Marshall tone stack all day long. The mids is a 25, well, should be a 25K linear, and the treble pot 250K, almost always linear. Look, sometimes audio on some of the amps, audio taper, but mostly linear. All right. Now, this guy here was a 250K pot, and this one measured 850K. So I replaced both of these pots in the end amp. All of this shit came out of why this is a standard tone stack. This is another example of the kind of stuff that you see in vintage Marshalls. If anyone tells you, again, the owner of this amp said, oh yeah, you know, I was told it was stock. They're never fucking stock, right? 1 out of 20, might be 1 out of 10 if you're lucky. So again, if you've got an old Marshall and you think it sounds a bit, you know, not quite what it should, get it looked at. Given this amp is a 1979 50 watter, the 1987 model, these are, and if you're familiar with your Marshall history, you'll know that this era of Marshalls have very low voltages in the 50 watters. Now this is measuring at 360 volts DC plate voltage, right? And it was biased incredibly coldly, so it was running at about 30% plate dissipation at 365 volts. So now that I've moved the bias up, so it's running at about, you know, low 60s, on about 62, around about there, percent. The voltage came back to about 360. So I thought it was worth measuring the wattage, right? So I'm going to inject a sine wave into the front of the amp, keep it as clean as possible, and we're going to measure the voltage at the speaker, right? So I've got my scope probe set to the speaker jack. I'm running into a 16 ohm resistive load, right? Importantly, not a reactive load, a resistive load. And I'm bringing the amp, we're powering it up, and you can see the waveforms coming up on the scope here now, right? So this is obviously not a clean sine wave, but I'll show you kind of how I do it, right? I'm running into the low input on this. Remember, this has now been configured as like a 2204 style front end with a high input jack and a low input. So I'm in the low input, which bypasses the first gain stage. Now, I'm just playing with the volume here just to get me kind of a signal that I can read nicely on the scope. And this is the gain, and you can see I bring the gain up, the waveform squares off. I don't want that. I'm just bringing the gain back here until I get something that looks pretty symmetrical and like a fairly decent looking sine wave. And there we have it, right? So now I'm bringing the volume up. I'm going to bring the volume up until it loses shape. See how that wave's squaring away there? That's power amp distortion there, right? Clipping in the power stage. Now, you don't want that if you're measuring. I'm trying to measure clean RMS output here. And so you can see if I bring this way, it's lost shape there. Bring it back, you know, a little bit more just to be safe. That's pretty clean there. So I'm going to read this here, 72 volts peak to peak, right? So let's plug that in and I'll show you how to measure the RMS output power in watts using that measurement. And I've got a 16 ohm resistive load. Let's do that now.